Push up. So the reality is, when you finish the fat loss prep, you've completed maintenance and you want to head into a push phase. The primary goal is to progressively increase your muscle mass. And in order to do that, we want to gradually increase your food consumption and incrementally enhance the training stimulus through more repetitions, more load, and more sets. However, staying in this phase indefinitely without planning strategic mini cuts or even a fat loss prep or going back into a health phase is not going to be feasible, because continuous food intake can actually lead to fat gain, especially as expenditure starts to reduce, which negatively impacts the muscle to fat gain ratio, which we would also call a P ratio. Now, additionally, prolonged periods in this phase can actually cause high inflammation and reduce insulin sensitivity, hindering overall health and performance. So over time, if you've been pushing your food up for 6, 7, 8 months without any diet breaks, you're going to experience lethargy. Okay, you're going to experience decreased pumps, decreased stamina, gastrointestinal issues, leading to low appetite. Now, furthermore, maintaining high levels of performance enhancement drugs, if you are someone that uses PEDs throughout the year, is not going to be sustainable due to health risks, long-term health complications, and the need for recovery. So, whilst a push phase is effective for muscle growth, it has to be balanced with other phases to manage these issues. So, there are a couple of things that we need to track: weekly pitches, waist circumference, the 3 largest caliper sites, including like stomach fat as well, your body weight, your fasting blood glucose, if you wanted to look at that, which is called fasting plasma glucose post-prandial meal, weekly blood pressure. So on average, blood pressure should be around 120 over 80 milligrams of mercury. Daily step count as well. That's so performance, just to drive glucose from the blood into the cell. And as well as that, just gym performance. So nutrition for the push phase, it's entirely individual, right? But hypothetically speaking, it's going to be structured to optimize both muscle gain and fat loss. During your gaining phase, energy intake is gradually increased by 10 to 20% above your maintenance calories. You don't need to dirty bulk. You don't need to eat absolutely everything. Instead, that's where you're going to see the best results, 10 to 20% above your calorie maintenance. Protein intake should be around, I would actually argue, 1 to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. Fat intake, that should be maintained around 0.3 to 0.7 grams per pound of body weight per day. And then when you're in a cutting phase, calories should actually be reduced 20 to 30% below your maintenance, still consuming a high protein diet, 1 to 1.5 grams. You'll notice that it doesn't really change. The only thing that will change is like carbohydrates, but also it's very individual. Fats don't really change. More so it's just the expenditure side of things. And then when we look at weekly weight changes, when we're in a gaining phase, should be around 0.25 to 0.5% per week. Cutting 0.5 to 1% per week. So literally 0.5 to 1 kilo per week. Now, advanced individuals, we want to be around 0.25% for every other week. Whereas if you are cutting, it's 0.5 to 1%. But again, we need to ensure other things are in place for this, such as training goals, progression levels, and also effective adaptation and performance over time. So what does your cardio or NEAT look like in a push-up phase? Now, in terms of the health benefits, I like to incorporate a minimum of 3 to 4 days per week. 20 minutes of moderate intensity cardio. That's also going to help regulate your appetite. And especially for someone that's very sedentary, setting a minimum step goal and adjusting cardio is going to be necessary. Clients, individuals with lower metabolic rates and food intakes volume should tailor their cardio routines accordingly. During peak off season, Consider increased cardio frequency to 5 days per week, for 35 minutes for every single session. And then it's crucial to prioritize gym performance, ensuring that cardio efforts support rather than hinder muscle gain. Opt for low impact activities like walking to increase energy expenditure without compromising overall performance levels. And again, these adjustments here are designed to enhance your cardiovascular health while maintaining physical performance and adaptability for your individual needs, but also seasonal variations. So what about PEDs, performance enhancement drugs, if you are an assisted individual? It's really essential to base the setup on insights gained from your previous cycle, previous phase, and the rate of progression. Now, we want to establish a baseline on the outset of the blast cycle to provide a starting point for measurements and also adjustments. So when you introduce performance enhancement drugs gradually, please do maintain a consistent diet and carefully monitor the body's response. There's absolutely no need to use performance enhancement drugs if you're not consistent and adherent with your training, your nutrition, and also other things like mindset, sleep, stress. When we actually monitor effects during this phase, it involves anticipating changes such as increased body weight, potentially accompanied by enhanced roundness and hardness. That could indicate water retention. Increased hunger is going to be very common. And these observations are going to inform you to optimize outcomes while managing potential variations in response to PD usage and also your training protocols effectively. So if we actually take a look at sample setup for week 1, here we've got the athlete stats, we've got their nutrition, cardio, training. I actually used ChatGPT for this. I just entered some random metrics based on what I thought might be useful. We can see their body weight is 220 pounds, fat percentage is around 10% right now. We've also got the glute, the lower back, the subscapular measurements for the shin fold measurements. We've also got the waist circumference as well, arm circumference, quad circumference, blood pressure, fasting blood glucose, all of that good stuff. And then we've got calorie intake, around 3,000 calories, 300 grams of carbs, 300 grams of protein, 70 grams of fat. They are currently in a 15% calorie surplus. Cardio right now for the push-up, 3 sessions, 20 minutes per week. What's the intensity? It's a treadmill, it's 10% incline, 3 miles per hour. What's their step goal? 5,000 per day. And then in terms of like their training split, push, pull, arms, legs, off, repeat. And then what sort of PEDs they're using within the 16-week mark. They got testosterone cyprinate, primablan enanthate, nanandrone, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, phenylpropionate, growth hormone, metformin, telmisartan. Okay. Now, again, it's very individual. These details do provide a comprehensive overview of what you tend to look at, especially during phased training and periodization. But your overall health management during these training cycles is going to be so important. Granted, if you're not someone that uses PEDs, again, we still need to be looking at cardio, nutrition, your athlete stats to make sure that you're in the best possible position to grow. The decision tree. Now, this is something I will use to determine whether we increase calories or whether we're on the right track to be able to grow. If there's a massing stool and adherence remains high for more than 7 to 14 days, then you maintain the current plan, but address adherence issues if they arise. Now, don't get me wrong, life gets in the way. You have work, you have family commitments, but if the real reason you're not progressing is down to adherence, then that needs to be fixed before anything changes, whether it's fat loss, whether it's maintenance, whether it's a push-up phase. Now, if there's a noticeable increase in scale weight within the goal rate of roughly 0.25 to 0.5% per week with your current plan, perfect. If there's a large weight increase or if energy expenditure was higher, consider increasing calorie surplus temporarily or maintaining if the week returns to normal. So again, it all comes down to other variables which are going to impact scale weight, factors such as digestion, PD usage, your menstrual cycle, food volume, poor sleep, stress, water retention from training. They are considered if there's a visual softening or increased caliper sites. If training performance is increasing and recovery isn't an issue, no changes to the plan are necessary. However, if recovery is compromised, please do consider lowering your energy surplus temporarily. However, if recovery is compromised, consider lowering the energy surplus temporarily. If recovery continues to be an issue, we want to review criteria for perhaps a deload, adjusting your training volume, and we want to consider increasing PEDs cautiously if health markers are in check. Now, this structured approach ensures adjustments are made based on observed progress and also your individual response to training, nutrition during the push phase. So how do we go about adjusting macronutrients? Well, the general rule for adjusting macros is to make one change at a time. To accurately gauge and impact your progress, we want to prioritize training and also adding calories around your training sessions to optimize performance and recovery. To address hunger, increase food intake during meals when hunger is the highest. So if you're hungry in the evening, of course, add food in there. If you're hungry pre-workout, again, add food in there. Increasing your calories. Again, ultimately to grow, we want to increase your calories above your maintenance. Within, I would say 15 to 20%. Sometimes the range is 10 to 20%, but there's no change or decrease in weight. Then increase calorie intake by 20%. If your weight is at the bottom of the range, increase your calorie intake by 10%. And if your weight is at the top or the middle of the range, just maintain your current calorie intake. If weight change starts to go above the desired range, then we decrease your calorie intake by 5 to 10%. So again, take a screenshot of this. This is when we determine whether we actually add calories, whether we're actually making progress week on week to ensure that we're not just accumulating body fat. To look at a weekly evaluation, we want to adjust calorie intake based on observed weight changes, but also your goals as well. Are you performing in the gym? Are you seeing performance start to rise? With regards to protein, carbohydrates, and fats, we want to adjust to support muscle maintenance, typically around 1 to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. For carbohydrates, we want to modify to enhance energy levels based on your activity. And then for body fat, adjust to maintain overall calorie balance to meet dietary preferences, typically around the 0.3 to 0.7 grams per pound of body weight per day. Now, again, these guidelines do ensure systematic adjustments to support your specific training goals, optimize performance, and manage nutritional intake effectively based on your individual needs, but also progress. So how do we actually adjust protein? Well, knowing when to adjust protein intake is going to be crucial for optimizing nutrition and your performance. If weight change is appropriate, but there's excessive body fat gain, reducing carbohydrates and increasing protein can maintain lean muscle while managing fat accumulation. During periods of elevated hunger, when you're on track with weight gain, especially post-competition, increasing protein intake can help to control appetite and preserve muscle mass amid increased food consumption. Now, if you're experiencing very low hunger levels, we can actually reduce your protein intake, which will allow for calorie-dense options or balanced nutrient intake. If there's gastrointestinal bloating or flatulence, lower protein intake can alleviate discomfort and enhance digestion for better overall health. These adjustments do ensure that protein intake aligns with specific needs and conditions to optimize your health and your performance. So how do we actually go about adjusting carbohydrates? Well, if protein and fat are already within optimal ranges, the focus does shift onto carbohydrate. Ideally, we want to maintain protein around 1 gram per pound of body weight. High carbohydrate intake offers several advantages, such as it regulates insulin for anabolic processes, it prevents muscle breakdown, it aids in fat storage regulation compared to dietary fats, and it also fuels anaerobic training for intense exercise sessions, enhancing muscle pumps, promotes fast digestion, and increased hunger levels, whilst facilitating nutrient absorption post-exercise and recovery. However, excessive carbohydrate intake may lead to increased food volume, potentially causing discomfort or bloating, elevated appetite levels, posing challenges in managing food intake for some individuals. Therefore, we need to carefully adjust and monitor your carbohydrate intake to ensure balanced nutrition to support performance and overall goals. So when do we adjust fats? Again, if you've already got optimal fat levels established, then we want to increase carbohydrate intake. That is going to be the primary adjustment. But it is crucial to maintain fats above 0.3 grams per pound of body weight, especially during the off season for overall health and hormonal regulation. High fat intake offers benefits such as facilitating a calorie surplus without the discomfort of large carbohydrate volume, slowing down digestion to manage hunger, even with increased protein intake, and providing dense calorie sources with minimal food volume. However, excessive fat intake can lead to lower insulin levels, potentially impacting nutrient partitioning and muscle growth, which will impact performance during intense workouts. It's also excessively suppressed appetite, posing challenges for individuals needing higher calorie intakes. Therefore, excess dietary fat is easily stored as body fat, especially in a calorie surplus, which can lower your glycogen levels, affecting energy levels and muscle signaling. Careful adjustments and monitoring of fat intake does ensure balanced nutrition to support performance and health goals. So next we need to look at adjusting PEDs mid-push. So when considering last resort adjustments, typically during extended off-season phases, it is really crucial to exercise caution and view this as an uncommon necessity. So preparation is going to be key, especially pre-push. However, because we are looking at mid-push, this adjustment should only be contemplated after ensuring several critical criteria are going to be met. So, for example, we want to confirm the ongoing nutritional progress with improvements in intake and quality, but also quantity. We also want to monitor for any increase in body fat that isn't paralleled by gains in gym performance. We also want to ensure all aspects of recovery, including sleep, nutrition, stress management, are well managed. And we also want to make sure that training has been consistently progressive without the need for a deload period. So, as well as that, we want to look at maintaining health parameters within acceptable ranges before contemplating adjustments. So, I guess in the context of performance enhancement drugs, if progress stalls despite adherence to the criteria that I mentioned previously, a small incremental increase in PED dosage might actually be considered. Typically, a conservative approach involves increasing by 100 milligrams per week, and we also want to choose PEG compounds based on their ability to manage side effects effectively and advance training levels safely and efficiently. So we can see all this down here, and we want to plan for these adjustments in future push phases as well as mid-push, integrating sort of the lessons learned to optimize your training and overall progress. So how do we actually end a push-up phase? Well, we need to recognize when to conclude it, because it's the risk to reward ratio. How much body fat are you putting on? How much muscle are you actually gaining? If you have persistent digestive issues such as bloating or discomfort, along with a plateau in strength training, in any training in general actually, or you have like increased soreness, pain in your joints, you've got elevated blood pressure, elevated blood glucose levels beyond normal ranges, you've got mental fatigue, these are all signs that adjustments need to be made. So to manage all of these signs effectively, we want to consider implementing a deload week at the conclusion of the push phase to allow for recovery and also to mitigate physical and mental fatigue. Now, despite deloading, we also want to prioritize practices that promote high recovery, ensuring adequate rest and nutrition to support overall well-being. If needed, plan a holding phase before transitioning into the next phase of training to optimize long-term progress and performance safely. So if it's a case that you've accumulated too much body fat and you have all of these signs that it's time to end the push phase, instead of going straight into a deload, you could actually go into more of a holding phase, maintenance phase, body recomp, whatever you want to call it, before you then go into your next push. So what this might look like is, let's say you push up for 16 weeks. On the 16th week, you do a deload before you head straight back into your next push, or perhaps you head it straight into a fat loss. Go into a holding phase before you then enter the next phase, whether it's fat loss or whether it's another push-up.